It's past
sorry.
10:15, and it's my pleasure. So I am ko Josta Herhus Aho, and it's indeed my pleasure under enrichment of professional practice, and in this case is for students, to actually hear the stories about pre-arrival conversational English from Julie, Himani, and Ruth, who will be taking us through this session. So the space is all yours.
Kia ora, Josta, and welcome everybody. It's our pleasure to share a practice that we have at Toi Ohomai that you might decide is worth trying at your place. So first of all, I'm Ruth Thomas. I was previously facilitating the pre-arrival and on-campus conversational English at Makaurau campus. So that's my role in this presentation.
Thanks, Ruth. I'm Himani Arumapperuma from Sri Lanka, and currently I'm pursuing Master of Applied Professional Studies, Adult Teaching at Toi Ohomai Institute of Technology.
Ora koutou, I'm Julie Miedema, and I work at the Tauranga campus, and I was working alongside Ruth, and I'm still currently the conversational English sessions facilitator on campus, and also the pre-arrival conversational English sessions online for students who haven't arrived in New Zealand yet.
So we're going to explain the conversational English first, and then how the pre-arrival came about. So we'll get going on that now.
Okay, so this is our team of learning facilitators at both Tauranga and Aotearoa campuses. And it used to be myself and Ruth who ran both sessions, but the past 12 months I've been working alongside Lee. And we do conversational English on site, usually once a week for about an hour, where students can drop in. And then we run the pre-arrival ones about a month before they arrive in New Zealand, and that's for about twice a week. But Ruth will go into more details as we go. So we started with conversational English on campus. As I said, it's normally once a week. It used to be twice a week, but we find once a week is enough. It's just a space where students can come into a room where we have an informal chat. It's often led by what students want to talk about, but I'd go in there with some kind of topics in case they didn't have anything specific they wanted to talk about. We'd look at things like greetings, a bit of te reo Māori, New Zealand culture. We would always ask them, is there anything they'd like to talk about next time, so we could prep something. But often nothing was needed. The conversation was led by the students. And the main focus of this, or purpose of these sessions, was for students to increase their confidence in speaking. And so here are some of the topics. This little board game up on the right corner there, Cross Cultures, is a fantastic little activity where students can talk about their own culture, and I'd get a chance to speak about our New Zealand culture, and one card out of that box could last a whole hour, because we just went with the conversation whichever way it went. So that's a really good little resource there. And you can see there's some of the other activities we do. I did some things on the Kiwi accent. Is it called Learning How to Dad? Those YouTube videos, which are quite funny, talking about New Zealand slang. We did some Māori, which was really appreciated. Yeah, all sorts of different things.
So just by way of background, from the conversational English sessions on campus, and we were still running those in 2020, but we had students offshore who some of their onshore classmates were attending the on-campus sessions, and they heard about them and they really wanted to join. And so I was trying to work out how this could be. So we moved the sessions online, and it was absolutely fantastic because the students offshore were desperately curious about life in New Zealand, what was going on over here. Their class hadn't given them opportunities to have informal communication, so they said how they were very curious. You know, they could see all these people in the classroom with the tutor, but they wanted to know who they were and have a chat to them. So these sessions filled a real need for, you know, sense of connection. And towards the end of 2020, we had one of our onshore students joined the session from Hamilton Gardens. She was just walking around there, and so she used her camera to show everyone from the students still in China and Hong Kong through to the ones in New Zealand, what the environment was like. And I thought, okay, so that made me realise we needed to do a virtual campus tour. So on our last session, I walked around the campus with my laptop facing outwards, telling them what they were seeing, who was this, what was that place. And it sort of became obvious that this would be really useful before students actually arrived. So that's what we started to do. We tried different things. As you'll see, the breakout rooms maximise the interaction, and we used the chat, but we tried Zoom Whiteboard as a resource to begin with, and it just wasn't effective because of difficulties getting on the board and that sort of thing for students. So we'll share some other tools later that you can use instead. Julie.
So our main focus in every session was facilitating conversations, and as Ruth said, in breakout rooms, which was the main thrust of all of these sessions, but we also wanted to add something extra. So for over a couple of sessions, we'd add Kahoots with a New Zealand focus with Kiwiana questions, and we found the students love those for 10 or 15 minutes of the session. They could learn more about New Zealand, and if students couldn't get onto the Kahoot, they could just watch it live. We'd have it up on our screens, and it was quite funny because sometimes the students who weren't on the Kahoot app, they would be yelling out the questions before the people on the app could put them in. But that didn't really matter. It was all about learning. And as we know the answers on the Kahoot, we'd stop and we'd talk a little bit more about different aspects of New Zealand and Māori culture.
So part of the sessions too is just to embed some aspects of Te Reo Māori, Te Tiriti, and how Te Ao Māori is infused into the learning and some of the courses that students will do, and just to help them understand about the pōhiri process and what that will entail for them, and begin with introducing some Te Reo greetings and common words. Part of that is giving them resources they can go and look at later.
Okay, so we work closely with the international team, and we use their professional Zoom account so that we can use it for up to 60 minutes. And they would promote our sessions online. They have virtual workshops with students offshore before they arrive in New Zealand. So they would put up, like the example below, a little flyer of what's available before they come here. And all the students who are enrolled are invited by email to join our sessions.
And just at the end, the international team will answer those technical questions, won't they, Julie?
Oh, yes, yeah. I think we talk about that later, but in our session, we would have students often asking questions about their visas, accommodation, transport to Tauranga or Rotorua, and they were quite anxious. And the purpose of these sessions wasn't for that. The international team had sessions to address those things. So what we decided to do was allow 10 minutes at the end of each session for an international team member to join us to answer those questions, which were quite pressing for some of the students, so they could enjoy the 50 minutes and then know that those questions could be answered at the end.
So in terms of logistics, as Julie said, you're counting back from the start of semester, or actually the start of orientation. And probably we tried to do the previous 3 weeks. So we would try to spread the sessions out, so 2 per week, which means depending on students' work schedules or other commitments, they could at least try to get to one session, but some were able to attend all of them, which was really amazing. And with your one-off intakes that are at odd times during the year, we've managed to squeeze in, say, 2 sessions prior to the arrival of a significant group. But obviously the time before the semester is a better time for learning advisors because the workload isn't quite as heavy. So it's basically in a couple of hours a week for each person and the planning. In terms of the time of day, mid-afternoon is suitable to catch most people, but still be within your learning advisor workday. So some people would be having breakfast or making breakfast. And we had one person from Russia who was the earliest we've ever had. He attended every session at 5:30 in the morning over there. And other people would be maybe driving their children to school or in a bus. We've had that, and we've also had people walking to work. So they, obviously sometimes they have to have their camera off if they're in a public place, but that's okay. We'd probably say 2 people is a good combination. You can bounce ideas, and one person can manage the breakout rooms and the waiting room if people get booted out and by the lack of signal. But one person can manage it. Julie will talk a bit about the request for recordings later. So we've got just a typical, very first session, opening with a karakia that gives us the opportunity to talk about how karakia are used to open a space, metaphorical, physical, etc. And this one is really nice because it's especially applicable to travellers. Introductions, the facilitators first, and meanwhile students are putting names in the chat, home country, their program of study and their campus, and we can copy that and hold on to it, which can be very useful information for later. Putting the students in breakout rooms so they can meet each other and make connections there. And you could give them 10 minutes and go in and they are just talking flat out. So really good. Maybe even longer than that, but we bring them out and then the questions that they've got, that they can either type them in the chat or ask them directly, depends how many you've got in your session. So we answer all of those questions that they've got. And that usually takes the whole first session because there's lots of meeting for the first time. And then the international team will answer those technical questions that they know the answers to. And we'll ask the students, what any particular topics for next time. And close again with a karakia and explain how that will enable us all to go on and close our session and help us move into the day from there, or the night, as the case may be. Julie.
So I'm just going to go through another session. We normally run 6 over a period of 3 weeks, and they're slightly different. So a student can come to one or they can come to all of them. So this is an example of session 2. Again, we do introductions. They were really, really important, and would put students in the breakout rooms again to talk about their course and the country they came from, the city, and that's where they made a lot of connections. And we needed to make sure these were student-centred, and that's where the breakout rooms were were really important. But sometimes we get them started before putting them into a breakout room. We talked about some greetings and farewells, how in New Zealand we often talk about the weather. So if you're stuck of something to say when you arrive with a stranger, just talk about the weather and you'll be good to go. We also talked about things like educational experiences. So when they went into the breakout room, they'd talk about how they used to study in their own country, and then they'd come back to the main room and we'd talk about it. Ruth and I, or Lee and I, would talk about it from a New Zealand perspective, and they would ask questions there. And some of them had questions about, are laptops supplied, or do we need to bring paper and pens or folders, or simple things like that were often asked. And again, at the end of the session, we'd have the international team come in to answer all those logistical questions, answer those logistical things about visas and things, and then we'd ask them if there's anything they'd like to study next time. Here's some other topics from the other sessions. I'm not going to show you any more sessions, but we did one on safe and unsafe topics, like appropriate things you can talk about in New Zealand culture, and ones that aren't. And they would talk about in the breakout rooms their own countries, and you can see some other things there. We did have questions about how to join clubs. And I remember there was one fellow, I think he was from India, and he wanted to join a cricket club. So Ruth went away and found a cricket club for him. And a week later, she came back with some contact details of where he could join. So, we can help in that way, as, to support them as much as we could. And we talked about different things they could do in these areas where we live, places they could visit. And we sent links to some of those things. And these were things led by the students, what they wanted to know. We did have some challenges with these sessions. Often it was their connections. Sometimes they would come in and go out, depending on where they were or what country they were in. So we would have to keep allowing them back in if they disappeared, and sometimes that could be 3 or 4 times. But most of the students were fine. They came into the session and they could stay there for the full 60 minutes. We did say cameras is sometimes an issue, so we wouldn't see their faces. And we did stress at the beginning that these sessions are to make connections. That's the main purpose with staff and with each other. And so you need to keep your cameras on, so that, you can't really make a connection with someone if you can't see them. But we did have one group, and we've been doing this for 2.5 years now, but we did have one group that continued to keep their cameras off. And we weren't sure why this was. So we talked about, the reason for having your cameras on, and it's a safe space and we don't record it and all the rest of it, but they still wouldn't turn their cameras on. And Ruth and I wondered if it was just the majority didn't want to turn it on and the rest kind of followed. But the session since then, we've had no trouble at all. And so don't be discouraged. If you do try these sessions and that happens, I think you do have to push a little bit to make sure people show their faces. But once they're comfortable, they're away. So it's good.
Thanks, Julie. So just in terms of the anecdotal evidence and what evidence we did have, we'd get a list from international, so we knew how many students had been invited, and roughly 10 to 15% of those who were coming or invited to come would actually join. So as Julie said, some would come to, just to the odd session, and some could come to all of them. And these were the obvious benefits, really, that students knew people. We had students telling us, they got off our session, and then they got on WhatsApp and found somebody that was in their home country who they'd seen in the session. So people were starting to make contact with each other before they came to New Zealand. And also the international team presents via a webinar, so and provides a checklist, but to make that real, the conversation in these pre-arrival sessions was really helpful. So people would realise, actually, now I know why they've told us to bring a hat and gloves. to Rotorua, for example. So it just made things a little bit more immediate and a little bit more real. It tied the theory with the reality. And mainly, I think the biggest benefit is that because it's student-centred and no question was out of bounds, students would feel very reassured. Because we were just meeting their needs and what it was that they wanted to know about. However, for ourselves, we wanted to know more. So I'm about to hand you over to Himani. And Himani was one of our star pre-arrival participants. She was extremely enthusiastic and attended almost every session.
Yes.
And we had a great opportunity of a summer research scholarship, which Himani was the successful candidate for. This is the research title, but she's going to tell you all about it.
Yeah, okay. Thank you, Ruth. I'm so excited to share our research findings on pre-arrival conversational English and its impact on its participants and learning facilitators. First of all, let me explain why we undertook this research project. Our first objective was to support the existing anecdotal evidence with research data and to see its impact in a reliable way. And also, we were interested in finding out and also understand short and long-term benefits, especially in relation to students' academic performance, sense of belonging, and employment pathways. Also, we were interested in finding out numerous barriers and problems students encountered when they participated in a PACE project. And also, we wanted to assist learning facilitators to improve PACE sessions, and we believe that the understanding of the findings of PACE sessions would help them to understand what works best and what they can do to improve PACE sessions for the upcoming international students. And also, we examined the impact of face-to-face conversational sessions, and we believe that in-person interactions have a great impact on language acquisitions as well as building confidence. Also, enhancing summer scholar skills was another objective of this research project. And as a summer scholar, I gained invaluable I gained invaluable insight into research, and I owe my gratitude to my head researcher Ruth for her invaluable support and guidance throughout the project. And I should say that she's an amazing teacher. And yes, okay.
Thank you.
Okay, now let's look at our primary research objectives. We wanted to explore the short and long-term benefits, enhancing social and connectedness and sense of belonging, and promoting socio-academic integration and achievement, and as well as supporting international students in achieving success in the New Zealand job market. The participants of this research comprised were students who followed different study programs ranging from level 3 to 9 at Mokoia and Windermere campuses, and they represented 7 countries. A mixed method approach was used in the study, combining survey question and interviews, and the sample population consisted of 100 students. That is to say that the students participated at least one or more sessions, and 25 students responded to the survey questionnaire, while 15 students participated in the interviews. The interviews were conducted online via Zoom, and over the phone and face-to-face. Interviews were transcribed using TurboScribe, edited, and the edited copies were sent back to the interviewees for their confirmation. Finally, they were sent thank you cards and petrol vouchers. The data was analyzed using IBM SPSS 28 and Leximancer. Okay, now let me share the survey findings. As you all can see, orange and yellow indicate strongly agree and agree. So most of the students said that pair sessions help them to reduce their stress and anxiety. Also, I would like to talk about it from my personal perspectives, as I myself participated in pair sessions. We were able to, pair sessions enable us to make friends, and especially the students from our home country whom we have never met before. And that allowed us to have make meaningful dialogues and then share our excitements and nerves alike. And also, pairs provided us the opportunities to meet academic staff at Toi Ohomai and have a good rapport with them, ask questions and get our doubts clarified, and thereby connected to Toi Ohomai, and then have a kind of sense of belonging. And also that greatly helped us to reduce our stress and anxiety. Also, Ruth and Julie prepared some very nice activities that help, especially Kahoot, and that helped us to understand Kiwi and Maori culture. And also it helped us to, the rapport helped us to differentiate Kiwi accent, and also the support helped us to get prepared for New Zealand life. On top of all that, students said that pair sessions helped them to, actually, they said that it was a very good decision to select Toi Ohomai to pursue their higher studies. Well, I would like to tell you about interviews, what we found. And apart from what I've already mentioned, a student also said that pair sessions help them to build confidence and also meet international students, which make them more relaxed, and also share their ideas in the class as well as in the workplace, and also perform academically better. And I would like to highlight one specific point, because almost all the students said that English competency is one of the crucial points which has a great impact on academic performance, sense of belonging, and employment pathways. That ends my findings, interviews, and questionnaire. Thank you so much. Over to you, Julie.
Thank you, Himani. So we continue to gather feedback because that research was from 12 months ago. And so this year, just the very last session that I held in July, I think, these are the countries that the students came from. And some of the programs were the Masters in ECE, Masters of Professional Studies, studying English here, health and wellbeing, or the NCAP. So that was our main group. And I had to show this one because I gave them a feedback form and how would you rate the sessions overall? And they all said really helpful. So that speaks for itself. I also asked them how they've been beneficial, so we could get a little bit more information and what did you like about them. And Ruth has kindly put some music so you can just read through these, so I don't have to read them out. But if the music doesn't work, please just read them as Ruth brings them up.
Sorry. Here we go.
Thank you, Ruth. So as you can see, I think doing these sessions is worthwhile. We got very few, and I don't think we got any comments that said it was a waste of time or anything like that. So that's encouraged us to continue with them, and that's exactly what we're doing. We are continuing with them, but some of the improvements they have suggested is there should be more time given to practice in the breakout rooms, and that's what we try and do. We need to focus on always keeping it student-centered. So, that was really important. They would like, someone said they like the sessions recorded, but due to privacy, we won't do that. But we do offer 6 sessions so that if they can't come to some of them, they can come to others. So we think that kind of covers that. Someone asked if we could do a little video clip of the campuses, and I've since found one through marketing that we're going to show next time, so they can actually see a little bit of a walkthrough what our campuses look like. And another student said they want to get connected or get more students connected through these online sessions. They think it's really helpful. So we're pushing it more with marketing and international to promote these sessions so students actually know they're available. Some of the final comments that I asked for in the last session, again, you can just read through those. I think Ruth's going to play her music again. Thanks, Ruth.
Thanks, Julie.
Is that enough time? And we had to put in gold if it's so remarkable, just to say we quite appreciated that. As you can see from those comments, they really appreciated the time that us learning facilitators put in, trying to just make their journey a little easier and give them more confidence and feel more comfortable before arriving in New Zealand. And I think we've achieved that. We can keep striving to make more improvements as time goes on. And we want Himani to do a little feedback video for us that we can share with other students, because she's a real live participant. And another thing we haven't mentioned is we work with them online, and when they arrive on campus and they see either Ruth or myself or Lee for the first time, there's lots of hugs and wow, and you are actually real, and those moments are really quite special. And so yes, we'll continue with these sessions.
Sorry, I was trying to stop the music and what have you. So just a quick run through some resources. Not sure how we're going for time, but some suggestions for you. These were some of the links that we shared according to the topics that, first of all, that we might introduce, and then also the things that students asked us about. So for wherever you are, you might have some specific resources. These ones, like say Sport Bay of Plenty, it just depends what and where could they visit in Aotearoa, for example. So just looking at what you need to share with them for your area or their curiosity. Again, as Julie talked about the Conversity cards. These are available from Jenny McGee in Hamilton. I bought mine online many years ago, and that's her website address there. There's some apps as well that you might find useful. Quizzes is similar to Kahoot. And then there's some other ones that you could perhaps use as well to just to add interactivity and interest to your sessions. So I'm going to stop sharing now, but for a Q&A. But these are the email addresses if you'd like to talk to me or contact us afterwards.
Nami nui, all of you. So Ruth, Julie, and Himani. It was a really interesting one, and it reminded me of the importance of what you did and putting it online, and the effect it has on students. But what you highlighted was comfort and connection, and that reminded me of Petra's transformative factors in our keynote speaker of Whanangatanga and Ahuratunga. tanga. So indeed, it is that connection is connecting students and make them familiar into a place where they're going to. It helps them to connect with each other, with you, and also that leads to a much more safer space, a comfortable space, and a familiar space. So thank you for that presentation. And indeed, we have some time to for some questions. Anyone who would like to ask? Jessica.
Kia ora, and thanks Ruth, Julie and Himani for a really interesting presentation, and really cool that you were able to do that research, Himani, to just assess the impact of what you're doing. I've got a couple of questions. One was about the number of students who attended and whether you found that there was like an optimal number of attendees for the sessions to run best, because I would imagine you need a certain number of people to come so that they have someone to talk to, but if it got too many, then it might impact people, people's willingness to contribute. And then my second question, I guess, is really related to that, is sometimes we find when we run things on Zoom that sometimes students are a bit more reluctant to speak than they are in person. It sounds like the breakout rooms were a strategy that you used to overcome that, but just wondering if there were any other specific things that you did to deal with that, or whether that was an issue for you at all.
Can I talk to the first one, Julie? And then, because this year I'm teaching, so Julie's up to date with the latest. So, but when we started, so the 10 or 15% of the intake was generally like sometimes that over the period of time we might have more than 20, but they wouldn't be all in the same session, obviously due to commitments and what have you. So somewhere, I think we might have had 18 in a session at one stage. Julie, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, it varied, probably from anywhere between 10 and I think our highest was 22, somewhere around there. And that was absolutely fine. And we just put them in the breakout rooms, that automated them, and that we keep mixing them up every time. And surprisingly, they spoke in the breakout rooms, they spoke really well. And I often would leave them. I wouldn't go in there too soon, because as soon as I'd go in there, they're like, and so they just, and so I didn't want, it wasn't for that purpose. So I'd often leave them and then go in there, and like Ruth said earlier, they'd be chatting away. And sometimes it wasn't about the topic that we gave them. It was absolutely fine. They were more talking about, oh, you're on that flight. Oh, we're on that flight too. Or, what date are you arriving, or what course are you doing? And that was all perfect. But we gave them a topic so they knew where to start. And sometimes I went into breakout rooms and they were really quiet, and that's when the facilitating had to happen, and you kind of had to get them going. But generally, in the breakout rooms left alone, I think it worked really well.
Right.
The main session too, and the main session, when they'd all come back, there was always the same students who would be comfortable speaking up and some who wouldn't. But when we did the introductions, we would go around everyone, and they just had to say their name, their course, and their country. So they were all comfortable doing that, but we didn't push them. We didn't push them to do any more than that in the main sessions.
Thank you.
Any other questions? They're a good question, Jessica. Thank you. There are some comments in chat. So indeed, the tools that you're using is a great resource, and it's a great program. Any others who would like to add? Otherwise, you might still want to ask questions. You have the opportunity to go to the coffee lounge later on, and hopefully Ruth, Himani, and Julie, you could be there if there are any more questions. But for the time being, here's still the chance until we go to the next session. No, then again, ngā mihi nui for your presentation. It was really lovely to hear it, and the importance of that connection and the conversations is indeed an important aspect of learning, and actually finding it comfortable to learn in an environment that is inviting, because that's actually what you're creating. Kia ora.